It's September the 27th. This is Sekeres and Price from the Nation Network studios, built by Arbor Lee here at the historic Wall Center. Beautiful downtown Vancouver. It's beautiful today, that's for sure. Turn game night into a game weekend. Why don't you? The game weekends are back upon us here. Book your stay at the Wall Center and enjoy the exclusive Sekeres and Price rate. Call 604-331-1000. Mention Sekeres and Price. Some blackout dates may apply based on availability, but have a great time here. Welcome to all of you watching live on YouTube, Twitter, all of our socials as usual right here. And we're, again, yes, back to show every single day here, 5 days a week. That is not Matt Sekeres with me. That is Irfan Ghaffar. Matt is back on Tuesday. Hello, Irf.
What's going on? How we doing?
We're pretty good. It's a Friday. The sun has peaked out here.
Yes.
It's a game day for the Canucks and the Kraken here in the preseason, and we're chewing up calendar days in the preseason, which is a good thing.
Yes.
Getting close to a real one.
The longer the preseason goes, the better, because that means it's almost over and the regular season is right there. The players might not think it's that way.
That's a twisted view of it, but okay.
But it is a view.
Our poll question today, what is the top point threshold that JT Miller crosses this season for the Canucks? 70, 80, 90, or 100? You say you've just seen the roster come across today?
No JT Miller.
No
projected
JT
roster,
Miller.
but the Canucks put it out saying Seattle bound. JT Miller is not on that roster that will be playing tonight in Seattle.
Does that give you any concern?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
He's practicing.
Yeah, he's practicing. I think that he's going to get one game in. Maybe that's all he needs to be ready. Maybe the coach wants him to get one or two, but I think the relationship with Rick Tocchet and JT Miller is so good in that they really trust each other. And if JT says, I don't really need to play, I don't think.
Do you think it's that, or do you think he's got a little niggle? I'm guessing he's banged up. Not banged up to the point where he can't practice, but banged up to the point where he doesn't feel like getting labeled by an opposition player.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. But why would you practice then? If there's any sort of issue that's going on, why are you even risking practicing? We know what's going on with the Canucks and injury issues. There's no secret there. But I don't know. I mean, maybe something's bothering him a little bit, but why are you going out and practicing full speed?
We formulated our poll question today based on thinking he might play. But now that he's not playing, the question sort of takes on a different tone a little bit in that, I mean, is there a chance he misses a game? Probably not. But what is the top point threshold that JT Miller crosses this season for the Canucks? Again, 70, 80, 90, or 100. Cast your vote on socials, Twitter, YouTube, and the like. What do you think? Where does he get to this season, Irf?
I think it's between 90 and 100 for sure. I think that, this team is a lot better. I think that, just judging by him playing in every single situation gets him up there. Better line mates. If the combination of him and Besser isn't working there, or Danton Heinen's up there and that's not working, maybe Jake DeBrusk is up there for a couple of games. Maybe things switch around a little bit. So the options are going to be endless for guys that he will play with. And that power play, if they can get that power play cooking, that was one of their, better things that they had going very early on in this season last year. Hopefully he can, stack up some points there. So I'm going to say anywhere between 90 and 100 points. You?
But he doesn't get above 100 points. So you're going to click. You'll click 90.
I'll click 90. I did click 90.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's a pretty. Here's the thing. I don't think there's panic if it's 70. Like if he's a 78 point guy this year, guess what? It's a really good season still.
Yeah.
And I think if he's got 78 points, it probably means he played 75 games, which again is okay given he's given so much service over the last 4 seasons without missing really any notable time.
He played 69 games in 2019-20 and had 72 points.
And that was
here
stopped short because of COVID. It's still a full season. He didn't miss a game that season.
And then the next season he had 46 and 53, the COVID year,
which was a 56 game season. So
yes,
he missed 3.
53. Yeah, missed 3. And then he went 99, 82, and 103.
I mean,
and he played nearly every game.
What was it? 4 centers in hockey have had more points than him in the last 4 seasons. It's been an unbelievable level of production. I mean, if it was 71 point season, that seems a little bit low. I'd like to know the details of that, but at 78, 79, you're basically a point per game player. And I'm going to guess he probably misses a couple of games this year because as you get older, tougher to be an 82 point or an 82 game guy. But if he's at essentially a point per game, I don't know that the Canucks need him to be that much better. And people that have already voted have voted along those sorts of lines. At DT Sports 77, I think his point total drops this year. First time in his tenure as a Canuck, they can roll 4 lines that can score. Best team he's played on here. Hopefully his minutes drop too. I don't think it's the best team he's played on, Donnybrook, but it's the best forward set maybe he's played on.
Yeah.
And that takes the onus and the pressure off of him to be a 100-point guy. And I think accidentally he can get 75 to 80 points. So the depth, there's only one puck out there still, as they say. Like if everybody else is getting points, and I think people are hoping that's the case, it's going to be almost difficult for him to be a 103-point guy, unless they're far and away the best offensive team in the National Hockey League. Like they lead the team in goals. You think that's a possibility? Are they that kind of a team?
I think so.
Yeah, you think so?
I think they're better on paper, this team, than they were the way they finished last.
Not defensively.
Yeah. But I still think that there is. I mean, the Heart Plumber Jay was also responding to our tweet. There's no reason to think that he will regress. And with the power play more consistent, his point total will only grow. If there was a 110-point threshold on this poll, I would have clicked this option.
Hot takes from Jay.
Yeah.
Scotty, if Petey gets his name on track and his line clicks, it will take a shitload of pressure off of the other lines. Miller won't face the top D all the time. If that happens, Miller breaks 100. So people are finding all these different sort of off-ramps in this choose-your-own-adventure of a season where, yeah, there's a path. If Petey and DeBrusque go off,
then they're going to get
and they get the matchups.
And then, yeah.
Then maybe it does free up JT Miller's line just a little bit.
Who will also be getting the matchups for the other teams.
Right.
On the defensive side.
Right.
Yeah.
Potentially. Who knows? Who knows how it Calvin says 88 points, my guess. Mr. Meme says, of these choices, it has to be 100, doesn't it? So cast your vote. Let us know what you think. I think it's going to be very intriguing. He plays the final preseason game, at least.
Yeah, I think so.
These are back-to-backs, too. Maybe he plays tomorrow night.
Yep.
Unlikely JT Miller was going to be playing both of these games anyway.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be interesting if he ends up missing both of these and he goes 0 for 4 to start. Something to take note of. We will see. Time for today's top story, brought to you by Yellow Dog Brewing, Yellow Dog Spirits, Neighborhood Brewing, and Foolish Wines. Kevin Lankinen gets the start, and his Canucks debut on a very short runway. Still doesn't have Canucks gear, mask, or pads. It's one of those, but he's between the pipes versus the Kraken. Can he answer the first start of the season for Shelovs? Is that a thing? Do you think that's it all rattling around in his brain? I gotta be at least as good as Artur Shelovs was in game number 1.
I think he's like, I at least need to get a puck from another NHL player to hit me on another team. He hasn't played in a really, really, really long time, right?
Yeah.
He was backing up Saros for all that time in Nashville, but he is a good backup. And when he did have his time in Nashville, he played well. And the Canucks got him obviously for a pretty good penny. Right? They didn't have to pay top dollar to go get a guy and overspend for a goaltender in free agency. And I think that, he knows what his role is here. I still think that there might be an audition period a little bit for further down the road when Demko is going to be healthy. Is it going to be Lankinen, the backup, or is it going to be Shelovs? I think it's going to be Lankinen, but, play might dictate that. I think we can both sit here and agree right now that it is Shelovs opening night.
Yes, that would be odds on for me. Yes.
What happens here in the next 4 games if things go, or next few games if things go sideways and Lankinen, goes out there and proves to be the guy? So what's to say that it isn't Lankinen? What's
the bigger competition here? Is it mano a mano for the interim starting job, or more importantly, perhaps is it mano a mano for the backup job when Demko comes back? Because I doubt they carry 3 goalies. I suppose it's possible. Here's the predicament. We've already run this down a little bit, but now that Lankinen is starting, comes back into the forefront. Like, let's say on the judges' cards, it's 51-49 in favor of Shelovs.
Mm-hmm.
So Shelovs has been marginally better. Demko comes back. What do? They can send Shelovs back down with impunity. No waivers required. If Kevin Lankinen has been pretty good, just not as good as Shelovs, do you bother losing a valuable third goalie in the depth chart? because he's only been just a sliver worse than the other guy. I like Shilovs might have to be outstanding to remain when Demko comes back. Isn't that true?
Well, that's the thing. And going back to the end of last season, Blake, when the Canucks had their conversations with, their guys that were there, they were trying to sign, whether it was, Elias Lindholm or Nikita Zadorov, the conversations were had and said that they were looking for a goalie because, Shilovs was going to go back to Abbotsford and they wanted a veteran backup goalie. They tried to sign Casey DeSmith. And they didn't get him. Obviously, went to Dallas, got a term, got some money. Good for him. So there was always this plan in place of needing a goalie. What he was able to do in that short time, and obviously his adrenaline must have been going crazy. He played so well for this hockey team. But yes, there's a lot of time to still develop. As a second, think that Lankinen won't be the backup once Demko is healthy.
So Shilovs is on the farm then?
I think he's there, and I think he's playing games. Because if he's not playing games here, and if he's not the backup here, there's no point in carrying a third goalie.
Yeah, and that's absolutely true. He needs to be playing.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that. And they need to try to keep three goalies because I don't think they want to find themselves in a predicament where they're nervous about their playoff goaltending when they get there. And I don't think you would be an injury in game number 2. I don't think there's panic.
Yeah.
I think there was probably a little bit of panic.
What's to say at some point this season, when Demko comes back and he is healthy, they're like, okay, we're going to give him a week off and you got to bring Shilovs back up and it's going to be those two for 3 games.
Yeah.
It's going to be Lankinen and Shilovs and Demko's just working on, getting healthy and getting ready for the postseason. That's a situation can definitely happen.
There's a little bit of scuttlebutt around the league. Other goalies have gone down. John Gibson had an emergency appendectomy. But what's done is done for Kevin Lankinen and his agent. They've signed on the dotted line with Vancouver. Again, in the most optimistic and rosy of scenarios, if Demko comes back and Shilovs has had a nice run, I guess you could entertain trading Lankinen if somebody's in a really bad way at that point in the season. But they may have learned their lesson that they want 3 goalies ready to roll, throughout the season.
Yep.
And come playoff time as well. Neighborhood Brewing, Yellow Dog Brewing, and Yellow Dog Spirits will be at Rhythm and Brews in Kamloops tomorrow. What a great name for a festival. That's, again, Saturday, September the 28th, tomorrow. It's an autumn evening event that has beer, cider, and spirits, as well as live music, food trucks, and a night market. So grab your tickets now. Rhythm and Brews in Kamloops. What are some of the other stories that you see from the roster from today here is the curiosities remain for the Vancouver Canucks in the middle of this preseason. Anybody jumping out at you from the roster for today?
I think it's just by looking at it at a quick glance. You've got Sawyer Minio playing, making his debut. Kirill Kravtsov,
yes, also playing. His debut.
What else is there?
Another one for Sammy Blais. That's 3 straight, isn't it, for Sammy Blais?
3 straight for Sammy Blais. Brock playing again. Kind of like that for Brock, kind of get the feel of coming back into the lineup and things like that. Elias Pettersson obviously is there. So a good mix, I guess, here of guys that are, just going to play. I mean,
I'm mildly surprised.
I wonder what the lines are going to look like, right?
Yeah. Danila Klomovic is making his debut as well. That's, if you consider the Calgary roster that they sent to Abbotsford, generally on the road trips, you send a pretty vanilla roster. That's actually a really decent roster that Seattle fans are going to see from the Vancouver Canucks in terms of Besser and Suter and Pedersen, Tyler Myers. I mean, there's some Jake DeBrusk. I mean, those a lot of NHL players. That's not what Calgary sent Abbotsford's way. So that one is not on television tonight. Canucks.com, by the way. So that's your way to see that one, but we'll see if there's anybody that bounced. I mean, I'm mildly curious about Danila Klomovic after all the helium from his first couple of seasons in professional hockey. Can he salvage anything? One might say it's a pretty big year for him. I think in front of the Canuck brass, when you've got them absolutely focused on you, and again, he's super young. Was he 21? I think might even be 20.
21.
when you know they're focused, like you could have a great game down in Abbotsford, and you're just hoping that info matriculates up to Vancouver and they hear about it. But they're watching this one.
Oh yeah.
So, man, if I'm Danila Klimovich, I want to have a good one.
Yeah, I think it's important for really anyone, especially him. Second round pick of the Vancouver Canucks, just 2 goals in 24 games in Abbotsford last season. Yeah, it's a big year, right? I think that when you have eyes watching, when you have people watching, and that there's opportunity with the direction that this team is going. There are roster spots available. There are certain areas that this team just lacks, and depth is one of them, right? And I think that we can sit here and say that defensive depth as well as forwards, like there isn't that much. The prospect pool is not that deep if you're a member of the Vancouver Canucks organization. So for him to be able to go and put a decent camp together and get that confidence, and maybe go back to Abbotsford and earn a call up at some point this season, I think that would pay dividends for him.
Speaking of Abbotsford, by the way, Jet Wu and Guillaume Brisebois successfully make it through waivers, as we suspected they would. They've been assigned to Abbotsford, so that's done, and those guys will try to work themselves back into the good graces of management and become viable options for the Vancouver Canucks going forward. I don't know how much luck they're going to have in doing that, but good luck to them. And one again was cheering against them. There's still youth on the side of a guy like Jet Wu, who's still 24 years of age. So he's got he does have a little bit of time, I guess, in the grand scope of things, but the fact that he's been with the organization for 6 years now, people wanted to see something come of that, and it just hasn't been able to be there for a guy like Jet Wu.
Yeah, it's one of those things where every training camp, and you got to do something. You got to make yourself available or make yourself be seen or heard or something. And unfortunately for Jet Wu, it just hasn't been that at all, whether it's been in a prospect camp, whether it's been in a main camp, or really in many of those games that he's played out in Abbotsford. It's been tough for him.
So we mentioned that Lankinen gets the start in this one, and yet there's other goalkeeping news of sorts at the very least. Elliot Friedman making a remark that there might be a link for Ian Clark. Now, what's his official title? No, goaltending consultant or scout.
Yeah.
May be a link to him back to Jacob Markstrom and the New Jersey Devils. And that makes a lot of sense. But you wonder if it happens right now, or does it happen at the end of the season here, Irv?
Well, that's the thing, right? I think the one thing that we need to realize is he doesn't have a director position on his name. So teams are free to call Ian Clark and say, hey, do you want to roll as a director of scouting for whether it be the New Jersey Devils or any other team if they are going to call?
As long as it's a promotion.
As long as it's a promotion for him. The thing that Ian Clark probably has is, he's worked with Thatcher Demko and obviously with Archer Silos for so long that I think he still kind of wants to be here a little bit. But the number one thing is his money, right? He's still getting paid a pretty good amount as a scout here.
Is your understanding that his paycheck has not changed since the title change?
I don't believe his paycheck has changed. I think he's getting the same amount for this season.
Yeah.
And then we'll see what happens after that. So because of that, he probably wants to remain a member of the Vancouver Canucks organization, right? You leave, even though it's a role of a director, you might not be getting more than what the Canucks are paying you right now. You can sign a contract that over time, it might be, but I think what the Canucks are paying him, he's making a pretty good penny right now. So it's going to be interesting. There are going to be teams that are called, if not more, that have called. And obviously Elliott knows something if he's linking the New Jersey Devils to him and with his ties to Jacob Markstrom as well. But yeah, I think the issue would be fit for him and his family and what he wants to do and what his role is as a goaltending director and how he sees it. And the other one would be money. It's always the most important one, Blake. It is money.
And he's at an interesting point in his career now. Yep. He's past the age of 60, I believe.
Doesn't want to be on the ice, or didn't want to be on the ice, or couldn't be on the ice, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, like for a 48-year-old goalie coach, getting a title might be of more value because, that can catapult you to the next step if you're looking to climb the hockey ladder somewhere. To take less money but get a title, I don't know that necessarily fits. If I'm I'm a 60-year-old guy thinking of retirement in the not too distant future, I think dollars in bank mean more to me than title. Now, if you're so dissatisfied with your role with the Vancouver Canucks that you've been neutered or muted to the point where you're just unhappy with your work life, I mean, that's worth something. You want to be happy in your work life. So,
yeah, I think the relationship has been soured a little bit for sure. I don't think the relationship has been soured between him and the Goldies, though.
right.
And I think that's an important one that people need to realize.
He feels an ownership of that relationship that he wants to see through.
Yep, that's what I think.
I think it's going to be a big scruple conversation internally, though, right? It's a gut check moment here for Ian Clark of what is the most important for me. What is the decision I'm going to make that makes the most sense? And there's a bit of pride, maybe, and again, seeing through the Shelovs and Demko experiment here, not to an end because he's not mirroring their entirety of their careers here, but at least seeing through the season that they are in to its closure, and then maybe moving on at that point. But you think he stays with the team? Is your betting favor right now?
I think we can have this discussion maybe again around the All-Star break, or the Four Nations break,
when the season is mostly in the back pocket.
Yeah. And then maybe teams are starting to look towards their future a little bit.
Yeah.
Kind of trade deadline as teams start to plan a little bit. But look, I mean, there might be an offer, whether if it is the Devils, if a team I don't do, and he's going to really have to think about it. But as it stands right now, yeah, he's a member of the Vancouver Canucks organization. Yes, the relationship probably between him and management has soured a little bit, but
who in particular? Jim, do you think?
Probably both, right? I think that, when you have these conversations and you get things taken away from you, when you try and have a conversation and say, what you wanted to do, and then that your job kind of got taken and now you're a scout, that's the one thing. But the other thing is, from their perspective, they said, okay, here, you're still keeping your money. We're still giving you what you wanted or what we have been paying you. So I think that that's also something that Ian Clark has to be careful with and take into consideration.
It was a very busy day away from the ice for Vancouver Canucks administration as they make several announcements, and several that should very much please the hockey faithful. We heard a lot about the conflict on Grey Cup Sunday of the Canucks and the Grey Cup playing at effectively the same time. Grey Cup started a little bit earlier, but there would be a large portion where you'd have both games on at the same time, side by each, at Rogers Arena and BC Place. Well, they heard about it, and credit to the Vancouver Canucks, they had blinked. Certainly the Grey Cup wasn't going to blink. It's been an institution. It's always at 3 p.m. on Grey Cup Sunday, locally. Well, the Canucks have changed the time, allows fans to watch more comfortably. 3 p.m. kickoff for the Grey Cup, 7 p.m. puck drop. Heck, you could attend both. That'd be a fun day in the Arena District.
Yeah, it would be. And I think the Canucks put out its nationally televised game as well. So that might have had something to do. Like, there was some sort of talks about that as well, that the game is nationally televised.
But it wasn't televised nationally. Was it announced nationally beforehand?
I think it was nationally anyways, but they promoted that it's nationally televised game. What if the Lions are in the Grey Cup?
Well, it makes even more sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think
they're moving the game if the Lions are in the Grey Cup.
No,
not at all.
No, you can successfully attend and or watch both of them. So I think this made a lot of sense. Not often does the NHL blink to the CFL, but I'm glad they did the if it's the Eastern semifinal or Western semifinal, it's not happening.
Nope.
If it's the Western final, still don't think it's happening. But it's the Grey Cup. A little different.
Yeah.
And from a nationally televised standpoint as well, guess what? Grey Cup does really good numbers. It'll do a much bigger number than the nationally televised hockey game will do. So it makes sense for you not to, cannibalize yourself or put yourself in a bad position, if you will, different network, but not to put yourself in a bad position of losing viewers. So you're going to do a lot better for your advertisers by moving the game to 7 p.m. So bravo. Again, that's not going to happen a whole lot. but the Canucks have blinked at somebody else for the first time in a long time. Now, the Canucks also announced their theme nights for the first half of the season, and this is just for the first half. It gets underway with not one but two, and because they don't play on Truth and Reconciliation Day, it went back to back with that over the first two games of the preseason, and good for them. We should note Truth and Reconciliation is on Monday. We will not have a show on Monday for Truth and Reconciliation, a day for reflection, I think, for all of us. So we hope you recognize that day of reflection as well. And a shout out to Sammy Amu Nation, who sent us those fabulous jerseys that you see in the background there. And we will be observing that day here on Sekeres and Price. It is a game night on Monday, rink-wide, with Frank Gafar and Jeff Paterson will be happening to cover the game that night. But just as a note, no S&P coming up on Monday. Home opener is a home opener, not a theme day per se for the Vancouver Canucks. But Alex Edler night, previously announced on Friday, October the 11th, starts that. Diwali night, October the 28th. Again, Monday, the October the 28th. Diwali night versus the Carolina Hurricanes. Firefighters night on October the 30th. I'm not saying that they should preclude a Halloween night, but I'm going to guess that's also going to be in conjunction with a Halloween sort of
probably
vibe at Rogers Arena, being October the 30th. Armed Forces night, November the 12th. That's a Tuesday. Next Gen and Minor Hockey night is Sunday, December the 8th. And then Pride night, December the 12th. That is a Thursday versus the Florida Panthers. Hockey Talks, December the 16th. That's a Monday. And the Canucks have a home game all the way up to December the 23rd. So they are billing that as holiday night, if you will, a Monday night game versus the Sharks. You're really going to have to get into the holiday cheer to be excited for that particular game.
Yes.
Against the Sharks. I guess it's
Sharks gonna be
Macklin Celebrini homecoming night. Well, we should call it that. Let's not call it Canucks versus Sharks. For some reason, they build this one after the fact. They went chronologically and then tacked on Hockey Fights Cancer Sunday, November the 17th. So those are your first half big nights on the Canucks calendar. There's a lot of them there. I'm thinking they are going to continue to abide by the no special jerseys and warm-ups rule. Pride night, of course, many of the players have been wearing tape up until this point. We'll see if that continues as well. The other little bit of housekeeping that they had was not housekeeping, but they got really artsy. Did you see the social media campaign that they released yesterday with these up close and personal photos of the players? Remember, you're too young, I think. You're just a little pup. Suitors Studios and and Sears Studio. Like, for those of you on YouTube, people love the close-ups of Brock Besser. He's the Prince Charming. Connor Garland with the you remember in school where the photographer's like, put your hand on your face. You're
Connor
like,
Garland's
really?
just showing off the rollie. That's what he's doing in that photo.
Okay. I mean, things become in vogue, whether it's the reality TV show, unveiling the schedule with the people in the street that get the names wrong in the team. Have you seen somebody?
It's the Tennessee Titans did it.
Right.
They were the first team to do it. And it was unbelievable, but it was so good. They had to do it again.
Yeah.
And they did it again this year.
Oh, but other teams have done it too. And other sports teams have done it as well. So, these things become a fad. Have you seen the artsy photos done before? I've never seen anybody do that before.
Not as artsy as those, but there's portraits that the NHL just did, portrait photos.
Your standard, for your player card sort of thing. Is that what you're talking about?
No, they had McDavid in a suit and Draisaitl in a suit.
Oh, that was at the Vegas media
at the media tour.
Yeah, that's a little different.
They're wearing their jerseys here. I mean, it's not like Brock's wearing a suit and it's like a full on engagement shoot or something.
No, it's just it's kind of giving me school photo vibes, like the.
Well, I mean, technically, yes. Well, look what the Edmonton Oilers did. They had every player hold up a sign like it was the first day of school, and they had their year written, what stick they used. their favorite song or whatever. And
that
whatever.
seems more up the NHL alley. And I'm not saying these are bad. I'm not teasing. They're nice photos, but I've never seen anybody else do them. That's all I'm saying.
Creativity and being creative departments it's wild.
You gotta find new ways to do things, and new ways to bring people in.
And it's a copycat league among the leagues, right? If one team finds something that's really good, everyone else is going to do it, and vice versa.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get into some of the feedback from today already with the news of Lankinen getting the start. KJ on YouTube, give Lankinen plenty of games to build his value, make him part of a trade chip to Calgary when Demko is 100%. I'm going to guess KJ's in the minority, and that will be a poll question sometime down the road when all the goaltenders have played, and assuming they've all played decently well, because those 3 pretty decent goalies. I think we're going to have to ask you at some point in the middle of the season, should the Canucks trade a goalie?
Yep.
And it's not going to be trolling. Not many teams carry 3 NHL caliber goalies. Generally, you have 2 that you feel really comfortable about, and you have a young up-and-comer that in a pinch or a full-on journeyman veteran. I don't think Artur Shilovs is a young up-and-comer anymore. I think he's a guy who's ready to be an NHL goalie. And I don't know that Lankinen's quite journeyman category yet. I think he's a definitive NHL backup rather than a journeyman. I don't know that he's Laurent Brossoit. That's not a dig at the local goalie here, but the guys that rattle around, I think Lankinen is regarded as a pretty good NHL full-on backup goalie. So we'll see.
Grim Studio, JT doesn't care about preseason. I think he's earned that. I imagine he'll get into a game maybe Monday. About JT Miller, obviously not being in the roster that goes to Seattle tonight. We thought that he might be.
And you let the veterans guide you a little bit in that regard. I think the Twins were probably, I don't know if they got as low as 2 games.
No.
I think they probably ultimately got 3. But now, without playing tonight, I mean, for JT Miller to get to 3, that means he'd have to play the remaining 3, which are still relatively spaced out. He could, I guess, play the remaining 3. Now, the Sedins would generally get down to 3, but that was in an 8-game preseason.
Yeah.
So that was still missing a bunch.
Yeah.
Maybe the comparable is there.
Yeah, I remember early on I interviewed, I think it was Henrik Sedin out in an intermission of a preseason game, and I said, what's preseason like for a veteran, like yourself? And he goes, just trying to get your timing back. And don't get hurt. B, trying to get your timing back, and C, listen to your body. Right. And I think for JT Miller, when he goes the way that he plays, he's going to be full go every single time he steps onto the ice. So I think right now, still get that rest. He's practicing. I think that's a positive note. If there was something that was really, really, really bothering him, I'm pretty sure the Canucks medical staff would tell him not to practice. So I think this is just, a veteran being a veteran, and he's probably going to get into 1 game. And I don't think that there should be any worry at all about this.
Sloppy Joe on YouTube. Canucks are going to win every overtime with Hughes, Petey, and DeBrusk. It worked the other night in Abbotsford. Is that going to be the golden ticket in overtime going forward?
Hughes, Petey, DeBrusk.
Mm-hmm.
And it probably starts there. I think you can bring out some other guys that are pretty good over the boards too as well, right? Like JT Miller comes out with Besser.
Yeah.
And Roenick. Or Hughes probably stays out.
I mean, Daniel Sprong could be a very, if people talk about him being a specialist, that maybe he could be a 4th-line player that you bring out for power plays. I don't know why you wouldn't bring him out for overtime as well. I mean, with all that space, you saw his ability to cut through space there. The fact that he can keep the puck on his stick at speed.
Yeah, with that Calgary team, Blake, they were just watching.
No, totally. But I mean, in overtime, there's that amount of space too. Yeah. Better defenders, but if you get space, if there's space, there's space. So overtime could be a lot of fun. Canucks were in a team that went to a lot of overtimes last year.
Yes.
So you wonder if that's a trend that can continue for them, and that they can sort of find a way to ensure that they get a lot of wins in regulation. And hey, an offense generally will do that for you when you need a goal late to stop you from going from overtime and giving away points to opposition. Certainly the best way to go about things. So thanks for the feedback, folks. We'd love to get to it whenever we can. One other final little tidbit I wanted to get to of news.
Yes.
A legend is hanging them up. The pride of Burnaby, Christine Sinclair, is calling it a career professionally. We knew she had ended her international career already. We've seen already Canada move on at the Olympics and other tournaments as well. The Portland Thorns, among those that were announcing it, saying you changed the game, you inspired generations, you did it all representing the Rose City, Portland. When you hang your boots at the end of the season, you'll forever be the greatest of all time. And if only that were the case unanimously.
Yeah.
It is unbelievable. And this seems as good a time as any to bring up the disrespect that Christine Sinclair has been given throughout the entirety of her career. I think she's been suitably feted here north of the border, and obviously still in Portland as well, where she's been a long-time Thorn. But internationally, my goodness, between what was once called the FIFA World Player of the Year, now called the best FIFA women's player, semantics.
Yeah.
Not only has Christine Sinclair the all-time leading international goal scorer, men or women, not only has she never won that award, it's presented as a medal, has long been presented as a medal, gold, silver, bronze. She's never medaled for the award, Irf.
Yeah.
How do we get to the point where the all-time leading goal scorer for international play was never deemed to be the best player in any given year or the best three players in any given year?
It's unbelievable, the amount of disrespect that she's been given. It's something that it'll go down in one of those history books. Is there and there was no reason why for it. I remember during the was it the Olympic qualifiers that were here a few years ago? I think it was. Abby Wambach was interviewed, and she said the best player in these qualifications doesn't play for our country. It's Christine Sinclair. And even to her, Abby Wambach, everyone knows the success that she had in her career.
As a podcaster, you mean?
No, I'm talking about
no,
the
on
soccer
the pitch,
player.
yeah.
Yeah.
She can do hard things.
Yes. And it's basically saying that, Christine Sinclair was and is the best player in the world. So it's been like that for a long time. Blue Marsh Award winner, Canadian, only once in her career. The Canadian Women's Player of the Year award, she won it from 2004 all the way to 2014. The only gap was after that, the 2015 year, won again in 2016 as Kadisha Buchanan won the Canadian Women's Player of the Year award here in Canada.
I think she might have been injured for part of that year too. So I think we've always known what we have. Why it has never extended beyond our borders is beyond me. She's 6 goals clear of Abby Wambach, who, granted, had her on goals per match significantly. Christine was 0.58 goals per match. Abby Wambach was 0.72. But third is Mia Hamm, legendary Mia Hamm. Christine's better than her for goals per match. A Jordanian who, granted, I don't know Mesa Jabara. She's still active for Jordan. I'm guessing might have been the beneficiary of some lopsided scores. She's the all-time leader at 1.04 goals per match. But other names, Carly Lloyd, way better goals per match for Christine over Carly Lloyd, who won the aforementioned FIFA awards before. I mean, it's better than Alex Morgan. She's neck and neck. We're talking thousandths of a point off of Marta, who owned the FIFA Player of the Year award effectively. I don't get it. And I'd love somebody to explain to me why that is the case. Granted, the U.S. takes up a lot of the air in the room with their team, but they will talk about Marta. The international media talks about Marta a lot.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just because it's from a footballing nation, but it's from a footballing nation that didn't give two shits about the women's game for a long, long time. Like, Marta lived in obscurity in the footballing world for a long, long time, despite her accolades. So maybe in retirement, maybe people will come to their senses a little bit and give Christine Sinclair the send-off that she deserves. But she is the pride of Burnaby and the Lower Mainland, pride of BC, pride of Canada. And that is going to be it for her on the pitch after the end of this NWSL season. By all means, she has maintained a vague sort of reference to staying in football. Like, she's going to be a part of the soccer scene, either internationally or on the net. There's a new league, of course, coming. There's going to be involvement from Christine Sinclair. We haven't seen the last of her. Who knows if I was going to say we haven't heard the last of her. She's tough to get a hold of, as I can personally attest to.
Yeah.
And I would love for that to change, for us to hear more from Christine Sinclair. Doesn't love the microphone. When she speaks, it's totally fine. So I don't know why the reticence to speak, but I hope she can do a little bit more of it in retirement as her schedule opens up a little bit, because we'd love to hear from her, and her resume speaks for itself. So happy retirement to the one and the only Christine Sinclair. Time for the menu, presented by Greta Bar YVR 50 West Cordova. Food and drink specials every day, and fabulous food as well. I tend to go towards the poutine when I'm there. Your place to get set for the game. If you don't have tickets, watch the game there. Great screens, great atmosphere in the city. Something to do during the intermissions. Go play in the now famous Greta Arcade. Check it out, Greta Bar YVR at 50 West Cordova. Jeff Paterson will join us for a lengthy discussion about the week that has been in the preseason for the Vancouver Canucks, all the machinations of the roster, what's still to be decided. We'll go to get into the JT Miller situation as well. And for those of you on the podcast side of things, of course, hashtags the best and worst of Twitter. And if you haven't noticed, if you're, a lot of you still just coming back to the NHL season, almost the entirety of the podcast is now available on YouTube, including our updates on the Lions and Whitecaps at the end of the show and the closing of the show as well. So stay through right to the very end for the entire sports landscape of Vancouver. Time for our best bets, brought to you by Bet365, proud partner of Sekeres and Price. What do you have for us, Irf? Do you have something in mind?
I like the Detroit Tigers to punch their ticket to the postseason against the Chicago White Sox. The Lions have been on the Tigers have been on an insane run, and they would be able to go to the playoffs for the first time since 2014. So I like the Tigers on the money line at -115.
They need
they win or Minnesota loses.
They win or Minnesota loses. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Gets them in.
I'm going to the Lions game tonight, and William Stanback. He's had the rushing crown wrestled away from him for now. I suspect that the Lions will use that run to set up the pass. It's been so good to them, and it's a safe way to keep possession of the ball. Stanback over on yardage, 79.5. I think he can get there at home. Nothing to slip on. Take the over on William Stanback here tonight versus the Ticats. Open an account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets. So whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code VANBONUS. Coming up, the one, the only, Jeff Paterson. In a season like this, you never want to miss a single second of what's happening on the ice, and you want to be around your fellow fans, right? Well, Greta Bar YVR at 50 West Cordova, the perfect spot to do so. Hey, if you've got tickets, a great place to pre and post. They've got drink specials every single day. And if you don't have tickets, well, stick around and soak up the atmosphere with all your fellow fans, play all the great video games and air hockey, great air hockey setup as well at Greta Bar YVR. We'll see you there, 50 West Cordova. Price from the legendary Historic Wall Center, and this next segment brought to you by the Vancouver Canadians, and they want to thank Seas fans for such a fabulous season out at Nat Bailey Stadium this summer. And if you're looking to guarantee your visit, your seats for you and your crew, however big it is, for 2025, please visit canadiansbaseball.com or call 604-872-5232. The one and only Jeff Paterson is back with us here as we get set for preseason game number 3. We can say this evening, sometime late-ish tonight, we're halfway through the preseason. Then that is a glorious thing to be able to say, Jeff.
Yeah, by Monday night, 5/6 of the way through the preseason.
Yeah.
So busy weekend for the Canucks, all out on the road. First time this season or preseason that they've been the visitors. Yeah, they played the neutral site game in Abbey the other night, but they were the home team then. So into Seattle, into Calgary, and on Monday night, Edmonton. And I think universally across the board in the National Hockey League, when you get into that second week, starting to trim down numbers. I think the level of play, the number of veterans per team goes up. So hopefully, hopefully we start to get some answers to the many questions that still exist around this Vancouver Canuck team. Still have a lot of bodies in camp because of this compressed first week of the preseason. So, I think we're going to see a mix of vets and some youngsters and guys that still have an outside shot of making the roster, or at least making it down to the final cuts as we go here. Rick Tocchet talked about it after practice at UBC on Thursday that, he knows he's got some true decisions. Part of that is because of the injuries to a couple of players, but also some of these youngsters have stepped up and performed pretty well through the first couple of preseason games. So we'll see if that continues here and how many of them are going to run the gauntlet. I don't imagine anybody would play all three of the games this weekend, but certainly I would think some of those prospects, the ones that are, knocking on the door, we might see them get into two of the three games.
And you've got an interesting perspective on those of us, and myself included, who thought that maybe JT Miller was a little bit banged up why he didn't play. Maybe he wasn't. He was been practicing the last couple of days, and we anticipate probably makes his preseason debut here in this one. But he's gone full veteran this preseason, it sounds like, huh?
Playing the veteran card. Yeah, I think he was the poster boy for the home game on Tuesday, at least on team socials. And I think we all thought, oh, well, that means that JT and Brock, and by extension, Danton Heinen, would all be in the lineup. And then JT didn't play on Tuesday, and he didn't play Wednesday in Abbotsford. So he is one of the few guys in camp that hasn't set foot on NHL ice here in the preseason. He was asked yesterday, are you anxious to get going? And he kind of deadpanned and said, no, not really. This is still the first week of the preseason. He's been around for a while. So he'll get in there. He was asked, is there an ideal number? He didn't really answer that question, but I would think he will play two of the final four at the very least. Maybe he gets into three. Whatever the case, I don't think anybody has to worry about JT Miller. He'll be ready to go. The engine will be firing on all cylinders when they open up against Calgary on October the 9th. So, Rick Tocchet has mentioned through camp in Penticton and again yesterday, JT came to camp and tested one of the better. His fitness test results were among the best on the hockey club, and it almost felt like him getting to skip the first couple of games was almost a reward for that. The leadership, the preparation, everything that went in. Again, Rick Tocchet knows what he's got in JT Miller. He has to figure out what he has in some of his other players. And so not a huge surprise that Miller hasn't played to this point. But yeah, I think we will see JT Miller make his preseason debut possibly as early as tonight in Seattle.
Jeff, you've been doing this for a long time as well. What do you look for in preseason games when it comes to rookies, veterans, things like that? I know we're early in, but what do you look for when you're watching a preseason game?
Well, I have to say, Blake, you had it right yesterday. I was listening to you guys as I drove out to UBC, and it all tracks back to do something. And it did originate in the preseason as I would sit and watch these guys who I thought had this incredible opportunity, whether they were draft picks or free agents. You're playing on an NHL rink with NHL management and scouts all watching. Do something with the opportunity. And I always think about a guy like Stan Smeel when he was in management and him, coming through the ranks, and a guy that just didn't miss an opportunity to lay the body and try and drill guys through the boards. And I get that the game has changed and we're at a point now where systems and structure and guys don't want to think outside the box, and they certainly don't want to stray outside their responsibilities. And they worry that if they do, that's how they're going to get noticed. And so a lot of cookie cutter guys in the preseason, I still think of Vilmer Ulrichsen the other night's a perfect example. He saw an opportunity to absolutely paste a Seattle Kraken. He knew that there'd be some retribution, and sure enough, but he was prepared to deal with the consequences. And here's a 19-year-old junior eligible guy, doesn't drop the gloves an awful lot, but he did something. He got noticed. He finished a check. He's a big body. That has to be part of the toolkit, even if he doesn't want to fight. I get that part, but if you are out there and you're finishing every check, guess what? It's going to draw the attention of opponents. And sometimes you may have to back up your actions, and he did that. And so credit to him. And Rick Tocchet mentioned it after the game. Like, he noticed. And so that's what I'm looking for. Like a guy like Sammy Blais, we've talked about, hey, you roll through a training camp, you're not going to run teammates or prospective teammates through the boards. But you get into preseason action, now it's time to step up your game. And didn't think there was a whole lot in his game on Tuesday. They came back. He was one of the 6 guys that played the second night in Abbotsford. There were a couple early checks in the first period, but I'm still looking to sort of see that perpetual motion, a guy that just doesn't pass up an opportunity to separate a man from the puck. And we really haven't seen that a lot from Sammy Blais. He's not going to play every preseason game, so time is running out. And if he gets an opportunity here tonight or Saturday in Calgary, that's what I'm looking for. So, it's not all about the physical stuff. I mean, the guys that are expected to put pucks in the net, they've got to make some things happen offensively. And even if they don't score, I want to see them in the right spots, puck on their stick. What do they do with it? Do they take their chances? Like Daniel Sprong the other night. I mean, we're all raving about the goal late, but you saw Daniel Sprong in the first period on the power play, not afraid to shoot the puck. Like, it was a shooting gallery. It kept coming to him on that off wing, and he was just winding up and firing. He hit a post. He ripped a couple of wide. Like, those are the types of things based on your skill set. I just want to see guys sort of play to the character that they've got and the expectations. And 2 games down, 4 to go for a lot of these guys. The next time they suit up, it's going to be their last chance. So leave management and the coaching staff with something to remember you by getting out there and ultimately doing something in these preseason games.
You take anything away from, I know we talked about younger guys and guys doing something, but the core, the Quinn Hughes, the Elias Pettersson, the Brock Bessers, I guess you can even throw Jake DeBrusk in there because he signed the long-term contract. We haven't seen JT Miller yet, but if you do take anything away from what those guys are doing this early on?
I know that there's been some chatter coming out of the Abbotsford game about Elias Pettersson, and look, he went through the motions. I was out there. I'm not going to freak out about it, despite Sekeres trying to suggest that I was going to be the one that was upset. Put him on ease and O's, and I did listen yesterday. So there you go. No, it's just Elias Pettersson didn't do much until the end in overtime when he sets up DeBrusk for the winner. So, his name's on the score sheet. He contributes to the victory. But I was just thinking to myself as I had the long drive back from Abbey the other night, imagine the reaction in this market, guys, if Elias Pettersson had done what Daniel Sprong had done with 14 seconds left in the third period. And people can say, oh, it's early preseason, he's ramping things up, whatever. I mean, Daniel Sprong stepped up in that moment, and clearly it mattered to him, and he made some things happen there. And I look at Quinn Hughes, and it was funny because there were a couple of shifts early on in the game in Abbotsford where Quinn Hughes was absolutely toying with the Calgary Flames. And it kind of felt like his first preseason action, and we really didn't see much of this in training camp in Penticton, but first time playing an NHL opponent in exhibition games, and it almost felt like Quinn was just testing to make sure it was still there, that Norris Trophy tool bag was still there. But he had a couple of shifts, one where he entered the zone, circled the net, found Atu Ratu for a pretty good look in front, and the Flames were just mesmerized watching Quinn Hughes do Quinn Hughes things. I would have liked to have seen that as a bare minimum from Elias Pettersson, a shift or two throughout the game where you just thought, all right, like, he's into it. He's dialed in, that sort of that PD magic that we know is in there somewhere. It really hasn't emerged yet through training camp or the preseason. So one game, but I just thought, like, Daniel Sprong was motivated with 14 seconds to go. It could have been Elias Pettersson. It wasn't. It was fun to see Sprong because you don't see goals like that scored in the NHL much anymore. But, what a different world it would have been had that been EP40 on the business end of a great individual effort.
I wonder if in his own mind, if he's getting 3 games, one's the total test game. How does my knee feel? If I try this hard, do I feel it the day after? And then maybe the idea is ramp it up and try to be more explosive in games 2 and 3. We will see, I suppose. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how he progresses throughout the season, and then the microscope really gets, of course, focused in once the regular season begins for him. Our first time talking to you since the first 2 games have been complete, and the young guys all made their impressions. It's going to be interesting this weekend now to see if anybody follows it up, and I'm talking about Lekramaki and Ratu in particular, who all of a sudden got put into the kind of realistic category to make the team. The 1 flashes, the 1 or 2 flashes that they've shown, sort of think, okay, good. They are as advertised. They are doing what they're supposed to do. to me, it's the follow-up, isn't it, Jeff? The ability to show coach, yeah, but you can get this every night or most nights at the very least.
Yeah, and it was fun to see them do their thing and the reaction from the marketplace after the home game against Seattle. And part of the test, and Rick Tocchet was upfront about this, he wanted to see how some of these guys would respond going to back-to-backs. And look, that's life at any level of hockey. I talked to Max Sasson after the game in Abbotsford, and he was like, hey, the whole AHL schedule was back-to-backs. This is nothing new to any of us. So, I mean, there's an element of truth there, but early in the season, first time. So there's some fatigue. There was different roles and utilization. They played on different lines, obviously, with different line mates the second game. So all part of the evaluation. And neither one of those guys, Lekaramaki or Ratu, was poor out in Abbotsford. It's just that other guys stepped up and stepped into the spotlight a little bit more. And so they weren't as noticeable as they were on the preseason opener. So, yeah, I don't know what the plan is for either one of those. Tocchet did mention both Ratu and Sasson as guys that he wants to continue to see here through the preseason. So I would expect that one or both will play 2 of these 3 games here this weekend, and we'll see how things go there. But that is the challenge. You're right. If you want to play and earn a spot in the best league in the world, you're not going to have 82 banner nights, but there has to be that baseline. There's got to be that level of consistency, and you've got to show the coaching staff that you can get there and stay there. So a little bit of a drop from game 1 to game 2, but really in my mind, it was more about the focus was on a Kiefer Sherwood, who I thought skated miles out in Abbotsford and was probably the best Canuck. I know DeBrusk scored twice, and that's great. I mean, he was signed to score goals. And if he gets through the camp and he hasn't scored any in the preseason, we're wondering a little bit. So for Jake to get 2 in his, and even he mentioned, he's just nice. So you're a goal scorer, you want to see and get that feeling again. It happened for Jake DeBrusk, including the winner in overtime. So, a nice launching point for him in this chapter of his National Hockey League career. But I think as we get to sort of the middle week in the preseason, the focus remains on some of those guys that are right there on the cusp, and the Canucks have a bunch of them, and that's good news. There's still a handful of young players in camp here who haven't appeared in the preseason. Sawyer Minio, Kirill Kudratsev, both of them were skating and taking turns with Tyler Myers on the practice sheet out at UBC on Thursday, which would suggest that one or both will get into some game action here over the weekend. And then up front, there are a few others. Danil Klimovich skated with the game group. He's sort of a forgotten man at this stage, but kind of feels like maybe they throw him a bone and get him into one preseason game at the very least. So we'll see where it goes. And Akito Hirose still has yet to appear in preseason action. And boy, when you think of where he was and his cameo there late at the end of the previous season after turning pro coming out of college, and last year almost a forgotten year for him. Injuries really plagued his season, but he's out there, but just not sure kind of where he figures in the Vancouver Canucks or the Abbotsford Canucks plans for that matter.
Kevin Lankinen getting the start tonight. That seems quick. I mean, are you a little surprised that he's getting in between the pipes after just joining the team a few days ago, really?
I am. At this time last week, he was over in Helsinki wondering about his future, and he signed on Saturday, flew in late Sunday. It's been a whirlwind for him, but he's had 3 practice sessions with the groups, whether it was the full groups or the non-playing group the night of the games. But boy, energetic guy. Talked to him yesterday, and we talked to him before Rick Tocchet had announced that he's going to go with Lankinen Friday, and Tocchet said probably Silovs on Saturday, but he left the door open, I guess, to a change in plans there. But Lankinen just, he's raring to go. I looked it up, hasn't played a game since mid-April in the National Hockey League, obviously the backup to UC Saros down the stretch and into the playoffs. So been a while since he has been tested in any sort of game action. And you're right, on the surface, it feels like it's been pretty quick here, but they're running out of opportunities as well, probably to get him a couple of preseason starts here. So we'll see what the weekend brings. But no, he declared himself fit and ready and was hoping to get one of these. I kind of thought maybe it would be reversed because they've still got Nikita Tolopilo as well, who I thought had a decent camp in Penticton, and we haven't seen him face any game action yet. They went with Jiri Patero the other night in Abbotsford, and he was all right, had his moments. Didn't love the Jake Bean goal from long range through traffic off the left side, but he also made some big stops on a couple of breakaways as well. Based solely on camp performance, I wasn't sure that Patero had earned the second start of the preseason after Artur Silovs was so good on Tuesday night, but they went with Patera. They're going Lankinen, and it's all very interesting to me just because Nikita Tolopilo had a nice season his first year last year as a North American pro down in Abbotsford. I kind of felt like maybe he was knocking on the door to get some NHL starts here, given the uncertainty around Thatcher Demko, but then Lankinen entered the equation, and so Tolopilo continues to battle and practice, but I'm not sure that he's going to get into any game action here in exhibition play.
You might have nailed it though, right? Like they don't need to see him versus NHL. Like it would have to go really awry for them to need him, you know. So maybe that's just it.
Jeff, when you talk about Lankinen and you mentioned, you know, him being excited and all of that, you think he knows when Demko does essentially do come back, he's going to be the number 2 guy, or do you think that there's still a battle for that amongst the goaltenders here in Vancouver?
Yeah, he's been asked a couple of times just about this circumstance coming into camp late, you know, last year, knowing his role in Nashville, and here it does sort of feel like it's a bit of a derby because of the uncertainty around Thatcher Demko. You know, I think at this level, coaches like goalies that make saves and win hockey games, and so when he gets in there, he's going to have to do just that. Artur Silovs, so we saw what he was able to do down the stretch. He's looked good here in his half a game in Penticton in the scrimmage, and really good the other night against the Seattle Kraken. So Artie looks dialed in, and I don't know if that was a response from him to the organization after they went out and felt they needed the insurance of a proven guy like Kevin Lankinen. Whatever the case, some of the goaltending questions we had around the position heading into camp have shifted a little bit, but there are still plenty of questions around goaltending with this Vancouver Canuck hockey club. So we'll see where it goes. My hunch, and this can change based on what we see here over the final week of the preseason, I would assume right now that Artur Silovs gets the opening night game against the Calgary Flames based on what he did for the hockey club in the playoffs last year. In the absence of Demko, it sort of feels like he is the 1A in this equation. But again, I mean, if Lankinen rises up and makes a statement, maybe that can change. But the way the schedule shakes down, they have no back-to-backs until the middle of November. Lots of practice time, lots of evaluation time. I think it really could be, we've seen this a little bit. Look at Boston last year with Ullmark and Swayman, like almost a rotation there with 2 guys that they believed in and trusted. I could see the Canucks kind of going down that road, provided that both of these guys hold up their end of the bargain. The question is, do they start to get a sense of how close Thatcher Demko is? Is he back around the group? Is he out there on the ice? Like, right now, he's not. And so he really doesn't enter the equation. We know that he's not going to be available for opening night. But as he does start to ramp things up, then I wonder, like, how does that change anything for either of these goaltenders? And we should say, guys, I think this was a pretty fortunate bounce on the Canucks' part, that just getting Lankinen at the price they did. But with the news yesterday that John Gibson's going to miss 3 to 6 weeks down in Anaheim, Anaheim was apparently one of the teams that was already interested in Lankinen. Had they known the Gibson injury news, maybe Lankinen winds up down the coast in Anaheim, and it's a different sort of storyline here for the Vancouver Canucks, scrambling to find another National Hockey League goaltender. Whatever the case, timing is so often everything in life. They got Lankinen done in camp, and we're going to see him in a Canuck uniform, albeit still in Nashville colors. He said he's ordered his new gear, but it's not here just yet. So he said he spent a good part of his flight from Helsinki thinking about what he wanted to do with his mask. Goalies always love to ponder those kinds of questions, and I think fans always like to see the final product. But Lankinen will be suiting up in Nashville gear, the stuff he's been practicing in all week, at least in the early going here when he gets into the net for the Canucks.
It's going to be very clashy. I'm not a fan.
Casey DeSmith did it last year with black and yellow Penguins colors for a while before he finally got his new gear.
Before you go, back to JT Miller, subject of our poll question today. What's the top threshold that JT Miller crosses this season for the Canucks in points? 70, 80, 90, or 100? And some of this is motivated by the tiering once again of Dom Lucian, who called him a B grade all-star, basically was the context for him, and the quotes in that article about JT Miller still tell us that he doesn't get much respect league-wide. People do not think of him as a 100-point guy, as an elite player in the NHL.
Yeah, and anybody that racks up points, I mean, a big part of it is health and durability, and that is one thing that really doesn't get talked about with JT, but he has barely missed any time in his 5 seasons with the Vancouver Canucks was looking at this earlier this morning. He's missed 4 games in the last 3 seasons total, and one of those was a healthy scratch in Winnipeg in Game 82 late last year. So not an injury or an illness there, just a coach's decision, essentially, if he can stay healthy. And that was one of the storylines for the Canucks last year, was all of their top-end scorers basically played 80-plus games. Is that going to happen again? I'm not sure I can bank on that, just the fickle nature of injuries, but it is a contact sport and guys do go down from time to time. But if JT can stay healthy, I don't think there's any reason he can't be a 90-point guy. Mm-hmm. We saw he got to 99 a couple of years ago, and I thought maybe that would be a career high. I got to 103. So, I think we've learned by now, best not to bet against this guy. And it does sort of feel like maybe he doesn't get the respect that he deserves around the National Hockey League. But, I don't know that he needs to have a 103-point season. I think he's kind of like the Canucks themselves. They don't need to have a 50-win, 109-point season. It's more about consistency. It's more about playoff readiness and preparation and hitting the postseason, on their game and in their groove. And I think the same thing kind of goes there for JT. But anything, just the amount that he plays, the penchant that he has for producing on the power play, the way the puck runs through him on the power play, even if they throw some new wrinkles in to the mix this year, he's still going to be a focal point with a man advantage. So I would say 90 would be the baseline. That anything less than 90, if he plays the full season, would be a little bit disappointing. I mean, he could still have an 85-point season and be a huge contributor to the Vancouver Canucks. But for the sake of the poll question, I would vote on the 90-point threshold.
You mentioned, Dom, B-grade superstars. I always go back to Team North America. JT Miller was on that team back in 2016. And there are some very, very good hockey players that were forwards on that team and that they could have chose not to pick. But you mentioned not getting the respect and stuff. He definitely has it from, I think, people that no one watched the game at an NHL level, but some
I
other
can't remember the last time I thought of that. He was on Team North America, really.
He was on Team North America. Vincent Trocheck, Scheifele, Saad, Nugent Hopkins, JT Miller, Connor McDavid, Austin Matthews, Nathan McKinnon, Larkin, Johnny Gaudreau, Jack Eichel, Jonathan Duran. Yeah, there's a lot of good players.
Follow that up, Irf. I mean, he's going to be part of Team USA. He's going to be a big part of Team USA at the Four Nations face-off. Yeah. And if I'm not mistaken, I think, did he not finish second to Austin Matthews in points among Americans in the National Hockey League last year? You think of this golden era of USA hockey and how many really, not just good, but great players there are. And that's sort of an underreported fact that JT was second only to Austin Matthews when it came to point production among the Stars and Stripes last year.
Unbelievable. Jeff, a pleasure as always. Thanks for doing this. Enjoy the weekend's worth of action, and we'll circle back next week.
Yeah, sounds good. Lots to dig into here with 3 games in 4 nights. So the evaluation process continues, and we should mention, and Irf already knows this, but Rinkwide coming back Monday night. We're going to do the final 2 games of the preseason. We'll have live streaming Rinkwide post-game pods. So taking the weekend to rest up because it's almost time to get after it with Rinkwide Vancouver for another season.
The Vancouver Canadians are back at the net. Catch fireworks, giveaways, and Friday nooners all spring and summer long. Get your tickets at CanadiansBaseball.com. Sekeres and Price from the Wall Center featuring Irf Gafar here for today. And before we get on to our errors and omissions, we should mention a big match at BC Place this weekend for the Whitecaps. Big game for the Lions. We'll start with the Leos here tonight as they try to get back to their winning ways, shake off some sluggish play of late, and maybe get a quarterback into a groove, whichever quarterback that wants to be. But I think most people are hoping that's the quarterback of the future in Nathan Rourke. But they need to get on their horse here. And I mean, one would guess they need to win 3 of their final 4 games of the season in order to have a chance to win the division. They might have to sweep out to complete it, given how Winnipeg's played of late. But first things first is to beat the Hamilton Tiger Cats.
No, of course. And I think that the BC Lions are a 7-point favorite. So when usually is that big, you should take care of business, especially on your home field. And for the Lions, I agree. I mean, the Hamilton Tiger Cats are not a good football team right now. So if you're BC and if you're, the head coach and your quarterback and you're Nathan Rourke and like that, your message is you got to go get this done. You got to get it done early. Mm-hmm. You have to go and, put your foot on the gas pedal and don't take it off for the entire game.
It's you got to use home field advantage to your advantage as well. So let's hope the place is rocking. But hey, it's asking a lot of the fans here. They've got back-to-back games at BC Place. That building is going to be rocking this weekend. That big one for the Lions. The day after that, it's a big one for the Whitecaps against a team right beside in the Western Conference standings in the Portland Timbers, who will come to town without Evander, maybe the league MVP this season, with 33 goal contributions. He had yellow card accumulation. Now they've got an explosive offense. They can lose him and still be okay. So the Whitecaps will still be tested. The question is, how is everybody feeling? What's the hangover like after the Canadian Championship party celebrations? And, how much gas is left in the tank for a lot of those players who defended for much of the night versus TFC before they won it in penalties. So, do they dare try to start Stuart Armstrong? How far away is it before they give the Scotsman a start? He only played 20 minutes in that game. Not even. He played 10 minutes in that game, pardon me. So, you'd think his gas tank is starting to get full a little bit here in terms of fitness level, and they're going to need to pull out all the stops in order to get the full 3 points. And mildly curious about goalkeeper, I guess. I'm 98% sure it's Yohei Takaoka, but after the way Isaac Boehmer played, you wonder if he's going to get a start sometime too.
Yeah, big couple weeks for the Whitecaps.
Yeah.
Then you got Portland, then you got Seattle, both here at BC Place. Teams that are right up against them or near them in the standings. But I gotta ask you, Blake, how quickly does it take to get into match fitness, and what really is match fitness when you come and look at some of these athletes, right? I think that how long you're here, how long you've accumulated to being in the city, getting into the system, is that more so what it is, or is it actually kind of getting into shape?
It's probably some fine lines there, and what we would consider shape obviously differs from what they would consider shape, given how far these guys run in the average match. But I'm a little surprised, and soccer seems to be a little bit more fastidious on what constitutes game shape, or maybe they are a little bit more feed up in the off season. I don't know, but you look at a team in training camp, like the Whitecaps training camp is way longer than preseason, way longer than the Canuck training camp in preseason. From the time the Canucks are meeting together at camp, which is a week ago, like they've only in a week, they're 3 weeks to playing for real.
Season. Yep.
Whitecaps have a 5-6 week training camp, so if you use that as sort of the barometer, is it going to be really the final 2 matches of the season that Stuart Armstrong is available for a start? We will find out. But 2 big matches at BC Place. Do support it, folks. It's so much fun out there right now. Both teams have the chance to win their leagues. They really do. So go out and support it and have a fun time at BC Place this weekend. Poll question yesterday here on Sekeres and Price, asking you about the possibility of Daniel Sprong earning a spot in the top 6. Will he be able to do it? We didn't specify a time period. In my mind, Matt said it could apply all season long. In my mind, I was sort of thinking to start the year, but we didn't specify. In the end, what do people say? Will Daniel Sprong earn a spot in the top 6?
Yes. I think it's a resounding yes, too.
Guess a number.
I'd say 80.
74.5, so 75. So yeah, almost within the plus or minus of 5. So yeah, but people
here's
they're drunk on that goal.
It's true, but here's my thing about Daniel Sprong. Like he's brought here to hopefully be a guy that can play in that top 6 role. If he's not playing in the top 6 role, it's because he's not doing something well. But if he's not doing anything well in being what he's being brought here for, to put pucks in the net in that bottom 6 role, what are you doing? And then if you're not contributing there, you're in the press box.
Yeah.
Right. That's the evolution, the next step. And we know that Rick Talk is not afraid to sit guys. So it's going to be an interesting one. I mean, do I see that he can get up there? Absolutely. It's staying up there is the hard part.
On to errors and omissions. And the only thing I've got in errors and omissions is from Yurke, who's always policing us, of course. Says, I think I have to call an omission on Blake, who opted for the Sea of Oman when you had this one sitting right here, and he provides a map. And at the just outside the Persian Gulf, the Gulf of Oman.
No.
Spelled Oman. I was sort of drawing a Sea of Grandlands comparison.
Yes.
The fourth line and the 13th forward.
Yeah.
Sea of Oman. Gulf of Oman would have been.
Oman's.
I don't want to cause any confusion, though, about the actual geographic place, but you're right. It has a certain ring to it, seeing as it exists already. Point taken, Yerke. That's it. That's all that I have. Thanks so much for listening. Again, a reminder, no show on Monday in respect to truth and reconciliation. And we hope that you have some reflection on that as well on Monday, and lots to talk about on Tuesday. That means with a trio of Canucks games to discuss. So we will talk to you then. Thanks for joining us, Irv. Appreciate that as always.
Absolutely. Anytime.
And you'll be with a post-game rink wide?
I believe so on Monday. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so
we're back.
You'll be back before we are.
Yes.
Please do listen to that episode of Rink Wide, and please do support many of the local sponsors that you hear us talking about. Support local. We'll talk to you Tuesday.
Hey, everybody, if you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Sekeres and Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?
Do that as well. Smash it right now.